So, hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Talking Wheels podcast. The weekly Speedway podcast comes out every Saturday. I'm your host, Michael Wright, on Twitter as Righto74, and my co-host, who has lots of reasons to be interested in today's episode, is Lynne Murray, up in my top left hand as I look on my screen. So, Lynne, how are you tonight?
Hi.
And Lynn's got a link with our guest today. So what in the last episode, this is a nice segue, because the last episode we found out more about Lynne and Lynn's support, both of Glasgow Tigers, but also particularly about a certain rider, and we'll find out more about the stuff you're wearing tonight, the background to it, and the support, because we've got Connor Bailey here. So big welcome to Connor, the Tornado.
No, thanks for having me. It's good to finally be on.
Yeah, we've done it. We've got there eventually. We've had a few hiccups along the way, which we might talk about or might not. But it's great to see you, and obviously, you know, really interested to hear more about you in terms of your background, how things are going, and what brings you here today. Really, both with the Tigers, but also what's really fresh in the news. And it won't be when this comes out, but today we're talking in kind of late February, and it was announced just the other day, really, that you've got this place at Belle Vue in the Premiership, the number 8 spot. So congratulations for that.
Yeah, thanks very much. You know, it's a really good opportunity to have. And at first, I was sort of starting to think, you know, it's another one league year for me. But yeah, no, quite late on in the signing period, and Mark Lemon gave me a call and just, you know, wanted to find out if I'd be interested at all in taking it. And I thought, well, you know, any experience is valuable, especially in the top league. And here we are now, and I've took it.
So how did that, sorry, I know Lynn's going to come in and ask you a bit more, but how did that come about then? Because obviously, you know, different ways of transfers starting up, or just picking up riders. I mean, was that just a cold call you didn't expect at all, or, you know, how did it come about?
Well, I called him for some unrelated reasons, just for a chat, and it just come up in that conversation. You know, if it, you know, we were just talking about National League, and, you know, I want to move forward with my my career and hopefully be in the top 2 leagues in Britain rather than the bottom 2. And yeah, he just sort of explained to me, you know, how the number 8 system's going to work, because I was just under the impression it would be the same as it is in the Championship, which is you're basically just a backup rider, and it's similar to that, but it's a lot more appealing to me in the format they've done it for the Rising Stars. So yeah, it just came up in conversation naturally, and it just sort of hit me that, you know, that's something I'd be interested in, and I thought I'd best take that opportunity.
Yeah, so Dorothy McNaught, you probably know from Glasgow Supporters Group, she wants to know, what's the rules for a number 8? I think there's quite a few people, because that one got quite a few thumbs up.
Yeah, so yeah, as I say, I really just thought that it would be the traditional number 8, where you just come to all the meetings, and if there's an injury or a no-show or something, then they'll use you. But with the Rising Star number 8 system, the way they're implementing it is very similar. I'll take a spot if there's an injury or unavailability, but essentially the main difference is that as a Rising Star, I can only replace the Rising Star on the team, being Tom Brennan. So an example I can think of is if he were to take an overseas duty that would clash with a Belle Vue meeting, then you'd probably see me taking his spot. A really important rule that they've introduced is that I'm the only one that can replace him in that eventuality of an injury or any reason why he can't ride for Belle Vue on a meeting. So it really just removes them bringing in another outsider and me still just sitting on the sidelines and watching by. So yeah, it really sweetens the deal that at least I know that I'll, you know, I have a fair chance of getting a ride or 2 throughout the season, and some much needed experience against the top riders.
And hopefully because he's an overseas duty rather than getting injured.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't want him to get injured, because I mean, injuries have really plagued Glasgow for the last 2 seasons, I'd say, and really let us down in the finals push. So yeah, hopefully it is just him exceeding and going overseas, and I can fill in to the best of my ability.
That would be great.
Will there, Connor, will there be any element of, you know, kind of getting to know the Belle Vue team and spending time around them? I mean, obviously Glasgow is probably, it's still your main place really, but you know, in terms of, presumably you know Mark Lemon anyway from the NDL stuff when you were racing there with the Colts, but is there an element of you're involved in the race night and a bit more, or is it really when you're called upon that you get more involved? What do you anticipate happening there?
Well, yeah, I am quite familiar with all the how Belle Vue works and the management, the fans, and the track and all that. But yeah, Mark informed me that you know, if I want to come along, I can come along and be a part of it, hang out in the pits, and offer whatever I can. And Belle Vue's only, I say only, but it's a 2.5-hour drive from my place. So yeah, you know, I can't see why I wouldn't be going down to as many meetings as I can, because it's you can watch them on the telly, but I think you get a lot more out of it if you're in the pits and watching it happen, and you know, seeing how the riders that are years ahead of you are reacting to certain things. So yeah, I think I'll definitely make a point of hopefully getting to as many meetings as I can, whether I'm riding in them or not.
And I've got two people asked the same question. William Morris and Alec Wilson wanted to know, what average are you aiming for this season with the Tigers?
As far as I'm aware, I'm on a 4.17, and don't quote me because that's just what I've been told. Because as a rising star, I don't actually get a published average that says, you know, that's the level I'm at. So as far as I've heard, it's around 4.17, and I'll be hoping to put at least a point on that this season, maybe 2 points, and hopefully break into the main body of the team and get out of the reserve berth. And
William also wants to know if you're going to buy him a pint on the Friday.
I'm going to buy him a pint on Friday. If I score a lot of points, then yep, for sure.
You did clarify this. I had a bit of a conversation with him, and he said the first time you scored double points, double figures.
Yeah.
And I said to him, well, the first time you scored double figures, if you don't buy him one, I will.
Right. First meeting back, then I'll owe him a pint.
That's it. That's it. And we're also getting people asking, what are you going to do to improve your starts? Now, I know you had a problem, but towards the end it was getting better.
I think that my starts compared to 2019 are a stark difference. I think in 2019 I sort of became known for having a rough start and coming from behind and chasing, but in 2021, after about 3-4 meetings, I had a training day with Crumpy, and he really helped me with my setup and basically how I was setting up the clutch, and I just completely changed it. I thought, what have I got to lose? So I completely overhauled how I was setting up the clutch, and it paid dividends. I think the next meeting, or the meeting after that, was actually the Plymouth rematch from the rain off, and I beat Crumpy in it in one of the heats, and I won 3 of my 4 races. So no, it really was that was probably the turning point of my season, I think, where it sort of leveled out, and I started a steady increase. Yeah, I still had the you know, the odd rough start here and there, but I think that's less down to something I'm doing wrong and more just down to the other riders in the race having a better start than me. And I don't think there's a lot you can do on that, because it's, you know, a lot of it's luck, or they might just have a really fast reaction, or maybe you just have a really bad starting position on the start line, and there's nothing you can really do about that. But I think all in all, when I look at the season as a whole, from the beginning of 2021 to the end of 2021, I improved on my gating, and that's ultimately a sign of success in my eyes if I'm better at something than I was before. So I think, yeah, I'm just gonna aim for consistency this season and just work on finding little differences in the setup and technique that can help me get off the start more consistently and better.
Josh McPherson, you know him.
Yeah.
He wants to know if you're looking forward to being his chief mechanic this year.
If I can find any time, I'll offer him a hand. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to, if I can get my hands on his bikes. I know that Matt Sewell, Metal Polishing, has had his hands all over him and actually fixed up a lot of the things that were annoying me on them, because I remember last time I worked on them, all the bolts, every single bolt was a different size, and it was doing my head in. So I know that Matt Sewell down in Wales has has had his chance to fix everything up and get it all smooth and nice sharp edges, and I can just use about 3 or 4 spanners to mechanic for him. So I much prefer that than looking through a toolbox on 2 minutes, that's for sure.
So then go back to the beginning when you started. Why Speedway?
Well, to put it as simply as I possibly can, food. That's what got me into it. Free food, and that's all. Because I was actually a motocross rider from the very beginning. That's where I first rode my first bike, and yeah, there was a good 2 years before I even knew about Speedway. I had actually no, to tell a lie, when I was a really young kid, very first on the motocross bike, we went to a special event. It's an inaugural event called Tumblegum, and they actually had a speedway event on just up the hill at a very rarely used speedway track, and I was probably 5-6 years old, I would guess, on a little tiny Yamaha 50cc, and that's where I very first saw Lee Adams riding. And I remember he went through all these heats unbeaten and then broke a chain in the final. And I just thought, well, that's unfair, because he's won everything and he still lost. So yeah, they actually gave us a chance to have a ride on the track, and I thought, this is great. Just big, flat, wide open, especially on such a little bike. I mean, you didn't even have to brake or anything, just flat out everywhere. So yeah, fast forward a couple of years to when I'm approximately 9 years old. That's when I first found out what the sport was, because I never knew the name of it or what it was or anything. They had a little display with a bunch of speedway bikes lined up at my local motocross track where I was racing for a couple of years, and I was just fascinated by them, because they're just the strangest, oddest looking thing you could imagine with a motor in it. I just thought, well, what's the purpose of that? And I must have just been pestering anyone that would listen, because they had a few people from the speedway club there, to raise awareness and explain what they actually are. And I actually missed a race because I was talking to them. I was talking to them all day and sitting on the bikes, and I was like, how do you ride this? What does this do? Just annoying them in general. And so I asked Mum and Dad, can I have a ride? Because it was advertising a come and try day. So I said, can I have a try? They look fun. It looks like fun. I want to have a go. And they said, no, you're already doing motocross. So I thought, oh, well, fair enough. I went back, asked again. I said, right, I've got to convince Mum and Dad to let me have a ride. And they said, oh, well, there is a free barbecue after the come and try day. And that was that was what convinced them, just go for the free food. You don't have to pay in, you don't have to buy a bike or any gear, just let him have a ride and then get some free food and maybe have a beer afterwards. And yeah, that's where it started. It's all downhill from there for them. I've dragged them all about the countries and now overseas.
Was that the most expensive hot dog they've ever had then?
Oh yeah, they're still paying for it years after. So yeah, no, I do owe them a barbecue at the very least to say thank you for everything they've done.
And did you? I mean, one thing I was impressed with, Connor, again, you've got to be careful as to whether what you're reading on the internet's true or not. But you've got a profile on one of the websites, and it talked about your regime really in terms of, this was about 2019, and you had kickboxing, you had kind of 8K runs in the morning before breakfast and things like this. Is this always something you've been into as well, just keeping yourself well?
Yeah, I've lived by it. I mean, even when I was just doing motocross as a weekend warrior, so to speak. Yeah, actually, I got into kickboxing as a sort of self-defense thing, and then I stayed with it for probably about 6 years. I got to the black belt level, and actually I was in the ring. It just what started as a self-defense thing. I mean, I think that's a pretty common pattern with me, is that I can't just do something a little bit. I've got to finish it. I got to achieve everything that I think I can possibly achieve in it before I'm done with it. And yeah, I've since I can remember, I've always played outside and done all sorts of stuff that inadvertently helps me get fitter. And since that first time I've done kickboxing, I've never really been out of the gym unless I was gravely ill. So yeah, I think I think that really does help me, is that I have a really good baseline for my body. It's something to always return to. So even if I have a couple months off or something, if I get sick or I'm just too busy with racing as I often am, I think it's great that I can come back to that baseline and just cut down in a couple of weeks instead of having to start right from the beginning, like I know a few riders have had to in their attempt to get fit. So yeah, I think I've always lived the athlete's life.
And I'm guessing that gives you confidence as well, you know, in terms of kind of throwing the bike around and thinking about you move, you know, how you are on the bike. Obviously, everyone's got their own styles, but that whole way of the confidence approaching the racing and thinking about your own setup, you don't have to worry about the fitness or getting your eye in. It's perhaps more just kind of, you know, getting some laps in your legs again more than anything, because already you're quite well prepared in the way you approach it. What about the mental side, Connor? That's something I'm always interested in speedway riders. How much of the mental side and coping with either races that don't go so well, or, you know, any kind of mental preparation. I know some people probably do a lot more than others, but is that a side of the sport that you do anything with?
Yeah, it's not something that I focus on, because I think that if you focus too much on it, you can actually burn yourself out in your mind. And I have found that in the past, you know, really just thinking and thinking and thinking about something, it just gets old, and then you lose your original focus on what you wanted to do. So I think that my regime, I know everyone's different, everyone works differently, and some things are more effective than others. I think that the best thing that helps me is just keeping a clear head and not really just thinking about what I'm going to do. I think, you know, when it comes to a race day in Glasgow, I will go down, have a big meal in the morning, you know, something good and something fresh. And by the time that goes down, I'll just have a smaller meal before the meeting and just really chill out, you know, sleep as long as I can, get a good night's rest the night before, and just wake up fresh. It's really, you know, I'm quite simple in that regard. I just, yeah, as long as I'm fresh, happy, well fed, I'm good to go for a meeting.
So this is going to be the first season you've started at the beginning of the season. How do you think that's going to go? Can you do the full season?
Yeah. I mean, it's not started yet, but we got our fingers crossed that I will actually see press and practice this year, and I won't be stuck in another country. Yeah, I think it's going to be good having a full season under my wing, because I've shown what I can do with just the 2 half seasons I've done so far, and I think after one full season, it'll be even double the improvement that I've seen in the past 2. So no, I'm really looking forward to that.
And hopefully, you know, the worst of the pandemic in terms of how that's affected travel and the ability to get across from Australia and to, you know, to commit to this. Hopefully the worst of that's gone. But obviously that's something that, you know, a lot of fans might be aware of, but it really has caused you quite a few issues, hasn't it? And your family, in terms of with last season. It's been a real problem for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, 2020 was tough. Just in general. I mean, we only went back for 2 weeks, and that turned into a year and a half. So I think we picked the worst timing possible to go back, just because while we were still in the air before we even landed, all the restrictions went into place, and that was it. As soon as we landed, they're like, "Oh, well, you're the last plane for a while to come from Britain." So we really got quite lucky. I mean, we managed to get into a country that hadn't really been hit very hard by COVID at that point, and wasn't suffering as badly as Britain. So I guess on the flip side, for the whole COVID thing, I think there's worse places I could have been stuck than Australia. But yeah, in terms of speedway, I mean, there's not a lot of meetings on in Australia, or tracks for that matter, and they're very far between. I think I was in the end driving about 20 hours just for a meeting. So it's just not worth it in the amount of effort and money you spend just to do effectively 5 minutes of racing total and then drive home again. I mean, when you look at it like that, it's absurd. But yeah, it's quite tough. I took all the riding I could get. I even actually was riding on a dried out lake bed, a salt flat.
Wow.
Yeah, even grazing the water a little bit, just right on the edge of where it had dried out, just with the back wheel. And that was another experience, because it is quite grippy. It's still got a lot of moisture in it, and it's it's made of salt and clay, so it's about as grippy as you can get it. And yeah, no, it was an experience, I guess, being stuck in Australia again, when I just had to sort of sit by the sidelines and watch as the season ticks down and pass me by for the beginning of 2021.
Yeah, you're talking about the surface there. My mum and dad used to live up at Mablethorpe, just, I don't know if you know it, but up on the Lincolnshire coast, and they've got sand racing there. So they have the bikes on the sand, which is pretty cool. So yes, obviously a massive disruption. You were announced as a signing at Glasgow, and then you kind of had to at some point say, I'm not going to make it over. It's not going to happen. But it's all come right now. But yeah, clearly that would have been quite difficult for you and your family when you've got plans and things out of your control are blocking them.
Yeah, I mean, just touching back to announced as a signing, I mean, I'd done the boot camp and everything and been introduced and met all the fans that year. And, you know, I was so excited to start my first season in the UK and really could pick up where I left off, because 2019 for me ended on quite a high and I was looking to continue that onwards. And yeah, I mean, it's just unfortunate timing. And yeah, a year out didn't really do anyone good. I think on the way back into Speedway, everyone was quite rusty, and I'm just glad I was able to at least keep riding every now and again to not forget my craft.
How was it for you, Lynne, as a Tigers fan? How did you find all of that then?
As a fan, I mean, I was wrapped when they released all the streams, and that I was probably the first one to buy one. I was staying up. I wasn't even sleeping really. I was just staying up till 4 a.m. to watch it and going to bed at 5 or 6 when the meeting finished. I think that first meeting back, there was a massive delay or something, and I actually fell asleep, and then the TV woke me up when the racing was on again. So yeah, no, that was an experience as a fan. You know, it was getting to see it from the other side, and yeah, I was just a spectator for a few months, just watching Speedway and not really doing much else other than go to the gym.
I presume you watched In the Red as well.
Yeah, I watched that when it released, and that was good. Really good production, and it was awesome to see Speedway further publicized. Yeah, I knew the filmmaker Patrick. He's, you know, lovely guy, and he's doing a really good thing. And I think he's actually got some awards under his belt now for it. So yeah, massive well done to him. And it was just awesome to be featured in a documentary. My first ever season in Britain.
It is. I mean, 2020 was just so frustrating for any Speedway fan in Britain.
Yeah,
because they had the Ben Fund Bonanza, and then Britain shut down. That was it. The Speedway Benevolent Fund has a race near the start of the season every year, and that kind of kicks off the season. And they had that race, that meeting, and then Britain shut down.
Yeah, kind of left everyone on the edge, really. I mean,
yeah,
led up to the season, ride up, and then no season.
Yeah,
and I think the worst part about it was it was never just cut off as no season. They just kept delaying it, and I think that's what helped me make the decision not to ride, just because it got to some late month, like August, I think, and I just thought it's not going to happen. And yeah,
and of course, while you were away, you had when you could have got out of where you were in Australia, there was another restriction in the UK, and then when the UK restriction was lifted, you couldn't get out of Oz.
Yeah, it was really, they just danced around each other for a little while, and then I think as soon as it opened up, although it was probably the worst decision to travel at that point in time, we knew we kind of had to, or I was going to miss out on another season. And I mean, when you look at how the restrictions played out once we arrived in the UK, it was kind of perfect timing, because I wouldn't have made it back for the end of 2021, or maybe even the beginning of this season, given that COVID's still stretching on. So yeah, it was a kind of just a lucky a lucky wishful trip back to the UK, and I'm really glad we did it, because it's paid off.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit. I'm going to go to Lynne, actually, because this is following the episode where Lynne told us more about her own background, and a really nice story about how, turning kind of a family bereavement into something quite positive, where Lynne's been able to help and to, you know, put some support into you, Connor, really, as a rider, and to give you, you know, help along the way. But Lynne, I'm just wondering, you know, people who've watched or listened to the last episode will know more about you and about how you came to support Connor. I'm intrigued as to why you chose Connor, and just a bit of background around that, if you would.
Well, obviously when he first arrived at Glasgow, my husband had recently moved to join me from England, and we were house hunting, but he was watching them at Glasgow, and he turned around to me and he said, "Do you know, when we get settled, I want to support a young rider just like that." And that's somebody right at the beginning. And I said, "Yes, well, let's get a house first," because we were couch surfing at the time. So we agreed we'd do that. And then while we were still going up and down to Leeds to sell our house in Leeds, we happened to be meandering back up north, and we thought, "Oh, the Colts are at Belle Vue today. We'll just go and watch them." And Gavin, my husband, got very excited. He said, "There's that young boy from Glasgow." And he still rides good. It's not just Glasgow. Fine. He said, that's the one. That's the one I want to support. So I said, right, that's fair enough. And so we bought the house, got settled. But we'd met your mum and dad, sorry, Connor's mum and dad, at an event that Glasgow ran. As Connor's dad put it, he and my husband met at the bar. It was my husband's habitual residence. And he'd said that he fancied sponsoring them next year. And he said, "We're just tying up the last loose ends for a new house, and then we're putting a pot of money aside for him." So he'd already told Connor's mum and dad that's what we were going to do. And then 2020 didn't happen. But we'd put the money aside in a separate account, no problem at all. Except then he died before the 2021 season, and I completely forgot about it until Connor blew his engine in the under-19s, and they were starting to raise money for it. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I've got this pot of money sitting here, and it was put aside for Connor specifically, not just for anybody, it was put aside for Connor specifically. So that's how it started, and to a certain extent, it can help me through a rough time as well, because it meant I was doing something positive and not wallowing.
Kind of gave you a focus in a way.
Yeah, I've just kind of gone in for it, for a penny in for a pound, you know.
As anybody who's watching this on YouTube can tell, because you've got some merch there. You've been really involved in kind of helping to almost market Connor, if that's the right way of saying it.
Yes. There was a few things. It started out, I asked the question, why has he not got a website? Well, he did have one, but the person doing it's no longer around, so we just haven't got round to it. We don't know anybody that could do it. And I said, well, okay, I do. So I thought, well, I could help that way. And then when I started making inquiries about how to build a website, where to get merchandise, talking to different people, and I thought, I could actually do this. I could actually make a difference and do this, because there's all sorts of rules with certain speedway clubs. For example, at Glasgow, the individual riders cannot sell their own merchandise within 5 miles of the stadium.
Wow, really?
Yeah. However, there's nothing against you collecting stuff from the stadium that you've already paid for online. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So we've got T-shirts, polo shirts, hats, fleeces, we've got some badges, and slightly getting ahead of myself here, because just before that, I kept asking Connor about a sponsorship brochure, and somebody else was supposed to be doing it. And they were kind of dragging their heels. I mean, we now know why they were dragging their heels, but they were kind of dragging their heels and they didn't have the time to deal with it. And I just said, well, send it to me and I'll see what I can do. And my cousin's actually a games designer. And because the document we got was partially locked, but he knew how to unlock it. So we got it unlocked and reproduced, both in an online and a print version. And it's just gone from there. And I'm coming back to an area I left 30 years ago and finding I've got lots of people that remembered me from then, still want to be friends with me and have useful skills I can utilise. Because a printer friend of mine printed his brochures for free. The guy that's been, my niece did the initial vinyl t-shirts. The chap that's just done all the embroideries, I was at school with his dad. I know that makes me old. And I said, how do we pick these up? Oh, my dad says I've got to drop them off at your house. So there you go. And he's been really good. So we've got these hats at the moment, and we're looking at maybe doing the woolen ones as well. But he's a wee kind of one-man business. So the order that he gave me initially was massive. And the poor guy's been working nearly 24 hours a day for 2 or 3 weeks to get this all done, as well as other orders he's got on the books. But no, he's a good lad, and it's nice to keep things local. And there are a couple of surprises, maybe. I've got a deal going with Royal Mail to get the postage done, where they'll pick up parcels from my house, deliver them. I've got postage bags with Connor's logo on it. So wherever we go in the world, Connor's logo and website address will be on the outside of the package, so people will see it. And I should, in the next 3 weeks, have carrier bags coming in with the same thing. So I think we're going to be flooded with Connor.
So without turning this into just an advert then, and for Connor, although it's nice to advertise it, if people do want to get hold of any of this or see what they can get hold of, where do they go, Lynn?
Right, the new website address will be www.connorbailleyracing.com. And it should be live in the next 2 weeks. Well, it'll be live by the time this goes out.
It'll certainly be out when this comes out, yeah, in early April. Good stuff. So that's really nice. It's great, isn't it, Linda? It's actually done something for you in terms of a really quite difficult time. And I guess for you, Connor, really, there's something around that feeling of welcoming, but also that feeling of support behind you as well when you're going out there. And I'm sure there's other people behind Lynn as well who are getting behind you.
Yeah, it's it's really nice to have all that support, and I think that's the main difference between racing as an individual and racing for a team, because when you're on a team, you're really a part of a family. And I mean, I really think the Glasgow fans show that best, as it's more of a family than just me performing for a crowd. Yeah, I know a lot of the fans now, and I get on well with them. And yeah, even if it's not monetarily supporting me, it's just constant support from every which way, and I'm very appreciative for all of that.
Yeah, it's a great start. I mean, and I know, Lynn, without kind of plugging you to other people, I know that you've got an interest that if people want help with this sort of thing in future, you might be able to help. So speedway riders as individuals who are essentially their own business. What we're seeing here is examples of you need to get yourself out there, you need to market yourself, you need to get sponsorship, you need to get as much that helps you. I guess anything that comes is going to help you with the costs, which it's a high cost, really, isn't it, to be a speedway rider? Yeah,
it's growing every year as well. Yeah, as I progress, I'm having more expensive parts and experimental stuff, and just in general. I mean, I'm needing more equipment per year. It's riding for more teams creates more wear, and yeah, no, it's growing every year, and so's my band of sponsors and supporters. So hopefully we can continue that upwards trend and yeah, just grow in general. It's awesome.
Yeah, because the idea behind it is that the more individual riders become known outside the team that they're racing for, the higher the probability that someone else who can help support them with sponsorship will get to know about them. So, because he's got sponsors in Australia, he's got sponsors up here, he's got sponsors in other parts of the country, but it's getting known is the hard bit, and it's just getting the message out there and using every bit of social media that you can.
Yeah, and that's the point of this as well. You know, that's the point of another Speedway podcast. You know, it's the point. It's just more people talking about it, more exposure. Hopefully, we'll get into people who don't know anything about Speedway and want to know a bit more, and go on YouTube and watch them racing, and then go along to the track. So that's the whole point, isn't it? So really, it makes me wonder, Connor, what would life have been like if you hadn't blown that engine?
Yeah, probably a lot different. I mean, it's such a sad event has led to lots of happiness, and I just don't know if it would have played out that way had I not blown the engine. And yeah, no, I'm definitely really happy with the direction things have gone, and it's just so great to have all the support I now do, especially from Lynne. I mean, she's working around the clock. She's awesome.
There you go, Lynne. You're awesome.
Well, I'm actually serving on a jury this week, and I've got 4 of the jurors agreed to come along to Ashfield on the 15th of April.
You're already weaseling your way into that.
So I'm working on the rest. We're planning, now that we've all been working at home, I've been working with a different team of people, and most of them live locally to Glasgow. So once they've lifted the restrictions and they're back in the office, we're organising an office night out to the Speedway. So it's just, it's getting the message across. I've already been asked by various people around the town that I live in, oh, I didn't know it was still running. So Glasgow Tigers are actually going to provide me with some flyers to promote the Glasgow Tigers Speedway, so that people know that it's there. And by promoting one, you'll end up promoting the other. And it's like you promote a rider, or you promote a couple of riders, whatever, and you then increase the interest in the sport. And I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, Connor, but the team this year, we've got an awful lot of young guns, young good-looking young men that can be marketed like a boy band. You're a commodity now. But Speedway riders can't do that themselves. They've got too much else to focus on. You need somebody behind you to do it. And once the framework's set up, it's easy enough for someone to then take on and say, right, I'll do this. I mean, I know not everybody's got the skills or the kit to build a website. I mean, when I first said that I was going to do this, I suddenly realised that my laptop had been a birthday present from my husband 20 years ago. And one of my friends in Canada just said, oh, don't worry about it, I'll sort out something for you. So I thought, oh good, he's going to send me a new motherboard or something. We were computer engineers together. So the next thing, there's a knock on the door, and there's a brand new laptop, a binder for making documents, laminator, all sorts of kit. It just that he actually has, although he lives in Canada, he's also got a computer business, an IT business in the UK. So it was literally the next morning, all this stuff got delivered to my doorstep. So there's people that may not ever get the chance to see Connor live because they don't have Speedway in Canada, really, unless it's Ice Speedway. Then they're still supporting, by supporting me, they're supporting him.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting, isn't it? And I think, what Connor won't know, because you've kind of grown up with this and grown up with the internet as it is. But I mean, I used to get videos from the local track shop at Kings Lynn when I used to go in the early days, and that's the only way you could watch anything really, unless you had Sky in the early days. And now what's perfect now, because I've kind of not really been into it for a few years and got back in now. And the amount of racing I can watch now on the internet, I mean, it's almost boundless, and it's so exciting to be able to get just open access to so much speedway and documentaries and all the rest of it. It's a really exciting time, which as someone who's older, I'm not really ancient, but someone who's a bit older, it's so exciting to yeah. I wasn't going to say that, but it's just all out there. And again, for anyone just getting into it, as you say, somebody asking you, oh, I didn't know they had speedway there anymore. Well, actually, it wouldn't take them long to catch up, just to get a feel for what it's about if they just went online and just had a look at it. But I'm going to move on a little bit, Colin. One thing I'm interested in, and obviously different people watching or listening will have different knowledge of you and your background, but you're clearly coming over from Australia. You've got an Australian accent, but we're also talking about you being at the Team GB camps and getting involved in that. So would you tell us a little bit about the background to that, how you're getting into that, what it's like, and what that means for you, you know, as somebody who clearly on the surface comes across as an Australian, but you're working with Team GB. Would you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, well, luckily for me, I suppose, completely unplanned. I was unthought of at the time, but Mum was actually born in the UK early while they were on a holiday, so it was probably the best time possible for me. Yeah, so she came early while they're on holiday, and through that connection, I'm entitled to a British passport and citizenship as a result of that. And yeah, that's what I've used to come over to the UK and race in British leagues and that as a British rider. That's obviously recognised by Team GB, and they've now picked me up as a part of the academy and the under-21 and all of that. So yeah, I suppose what that really means in the big picture of things is that if ever I'm picked for any national team, it'll be Team GB as a British rider, because that is how I identify as a British speedway rider. Yeah, so it's really good being a part of that, and I think being involved now, being invited to be involved with Team GB is really sort of sealed the deal, so to speak. You know, it's nice to be recognised as a Brit. Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it, and the training camps are unreal. I mean, the amount of experience that the organisers have, and just the pure amount of information that they have on hand, and especially, you know, they're inventing exercises just for speedway. So yeah, no, it's really awesome, and I've just been really enjoying it right from the get-go. It's just such an honor to be involved and to be appreciated as a British rider.
Yeah, it's had real praise, hasn't it? I mean, we've talked to a few people now who have talked a lot about the Team GB setup with Rob and Vicky, but also the extended team who are working with them. And it just sounds really slick, professional, quite inspirational, really. I mean, what kind of, you said there a little bit about, you know, inventing exercises for speedway. What's the typical kind of thing you would do? So if you go through a weekend then on one of these camps, what kind of things would you get up to?
Usually they run a couple of seminars just talking about things like sleep and race day preparedness, and just other top secret race winning formulas and stuff like that. But no, there's a lot of information, and then, you know, a lot of hardcore training as well, just to sort of benchmark us as riders and see where we're at and what we need to work on to get to where we need to be. Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's very professional compared to anything I've really seen before in regards to a national team. I think what they've done is they've sort of took a look at themselves and thought, right, what can we do to be as productive as possible with this, and how can we actually make a difference to the up and coming youth? Because you look at Poland, they're just pumping out rider after rider after rider, and you can, when you take a look at the whole what they're doing, I mean, obviously we're on a smaller scale, we don't have the money to work with like they do as a country in speedway, but I think they've really, for what we have, taken a leaf out of Poland's book and tried to develop it into a way that will help us develop not just as riders but also as people, you know, in our heads and mental, because I think that especially in a team environment under such high pressure, the mental part of it does come into play quite a bit, but it's more subconscious than sort of thinking about it and just your performance and stuff like that.
It just sounds really cool, doesn't it? It sounds like kind of bringing the youngsters through, but also, and I guess as well, piggybacking on the success at the Speedway of Nations last season, you know, it's given it a big booster as well to say, well, you're obviously on the right track here, pardon the pun. Obviously on the right track, doing the right things, because good things are starting to happen, and there's a group now of young riders coming through in this country, which you kind of think, actually, if they carry on in this way, then hopefully the future's quite bright in this country for the Speedway.
Yeah, I think you know, you can be a good rider with no support, and you won't make it just because of that. I mean, you can be the best rider to ever grace a speedway track, and without support, no one will ever know who you are, and you won't develop past the point that you reach. I think that, you know, this program's taking that type of rider, the riders that have got what it takes to reach the top, and sort of helping them realize their goals, and develop them into what they need to be in order to reach higher even. I think it's that level of support more than anything. I mean, obviously it takes talent, but I think that level of support more than anything is helping the riders excel and come up through the ranks to be the next Ty Woofenden or something like that.
Well, what kind, I mean, on that really, what kind of ambitions do you, I don't know whether you set targets for yourself or whether you have a view of where you want to be in a certain amount of years, but you know, where do you look when you look ahead now? What are you aiming at? What are you hoping to be at, say, in the next 2 or 3 years? Or is it really just about making the most of things now and taking things as they come and do the right things?
Yeah, well, I guess the long-term goal is always going to be, I'm going to be the world champion. I think every speedway rider ever has that long-term goal just on the back burner. But it's all the little goals in between being a beginner and being the world champion that you need to reach in order to get to your ultimate goal, because you can't go from 0 to 100. You need to go to each little rung of the ladder first. So I think that the way I approach it is to just master things and then move on, instead of just trying to work on everything at once and be the best immediately. You know, going back to how I'm talking about my starts and stuff, I'm not done with them yet, and I think that until I've perfected them, I can't really move on to other areas. I think, you know, through racing, those areas will develop naturally, but looking at things intensively, I think you can really only work on one area at a time intensively. Otherwise you burn out, and also you just don't put your full attention into one specific thing. So yeah, you know, I'm working on my starts for now, but I know in a couple of years or even a year's time, I'll be onto another area of my riding that presents itself as needing improving.
And you've got an older brother and sister that your parents left behind to support you, and they're still behind you?
Yeah, I think they've always seen me as the spoiled golden child through my whole life, given that they're both so much older than me, and I popped up and just sort of took the limelight from them. But no, they're 100% behind me, and they're really good supporters, and I think they understand what I want to achieve, and you know, I think they're sort of happy to see that I'm, despite being so far away from them, actually going on to bigger and better things. And yeah, you know, hopefully once all COVID and that clears up 100%, I'll have the courage to go home and know that I won't get stuck there for a year and a half, and I'll be able to catch up with the whole family, not just them, but you know, my cousins and uncle and auntie and all that as well. Because yeah, you know, it is hard being away from your families for so long. I think it's quite lucky that I've actually got mum and dad here, because I'm not just isolated and alone. I'm you know, I'm not just feeling homesick. Because I think that the problem that a lot of, not just Australian riders, but foreign riders in general have, is they come over alone, and a lot of their attention is focused on how upset they are that they're missing home, or missing their food, or even something as simple as just their bed. And you know, it takes away from their performance on track. So I think that having some form of family here really helps me to just know I've got someone behind me always, and to just focus on my racing.
Well, I ask most people this. You're a little young at the moment, but if you had kids, would you let them on a speedway bike?
Yeah, 100%. But I would never make them ride it, because coming through the ranks as junior, I see a lot of people that were, they were somebody back in the day, and they kind of forced their kids into it. And the kids don't really want to do it. They feel quite pressured because dad wants them to do it, but they don't really want to do it. And it shows. I mean, that if you don't want to do something, you'll never do well in it. And yeah, I'm always going to let my kids ride a speedway bike, but the one thing I've promised to never do is to force them into it just because I was into it. I'll happily raise a piano player or something, as painful as that may be to start with. As long as they're following their passion, I'll be happy.
Right, and do you think there's a few, not many, there's a few girls coming into the speedway, young ladies coming into the speedway now to ride. Do you think that's a good thing to encourage?
Yeah, I can't see why not. I mean, if you can ride a speedway bike, it doesn't really matter what gender you are. I think that, what every sport has sort of suffered from in the past is that it just doesn't have a high female exposure. I mean, not many women really want to ride a bike, or especially not one with no brakes or a speedway bike. But it is quite nice seeing them coming into the sport. It's refreshing as well to see some diversity. And I mean, there's not a lot right now, but in a few years' time, we might even have a female world champion. You can never predict things like this, and it's just nice to see speedway diversifying.
Yeah, I thought about getting my grandson a bike at Christmas, and his dad or his granddad took him to Scunthorpe to watch the speedway. Well, he took both my grandkids, and although he liked it on the telly, when he actually got there, he didn't like it. Now my granddaughter, well, but my granddaughter didn't like it on the telly. Now she's obsessed with it live. So I think it's part that we're buying a bike for.
Yeah. No, I mean, sometimes things look better than they actually are when they're advertised on TV and stuff, or other times it doesn't give the full credit to the sport, which I think is the case a lot of the times in speedway. You can't hear it, see it, smell it, all the things that go into it. You can't put that in a TV, and you never will be able to. No. So I think that going along and experiencing the excitement and seeing the crowd cheer, and maybe even a crash or two, it's just, I think, exhilarating even for the fans, not just the riders in it.
Yeah. So you do other things apart from speedway. What else do you do?
Well, I've just started my apprenticeship to be a mechanic, just a automotive mechanic on cars and vans. So in the next couple of years, I'll be able to actually get my qualification, and I'll be a mechanic as well as a speedway rider. The main thing behind that is that I just want something to fall back on in the hopefully unlikely event that I can't continue to pursue speedway. And I suppose that's really all there is to me right now. I'm just kind of gym, work, and bikes. I do play games from time to time, video games, but haven't been able to as much recently, or just not been as interested because I've just been flat out and really valuing my sleep. So yeah, no, there's not a lot to me, I think, when you take away speedway, but I've got enough to get by.
I'm sure that's not quite the case, I'm sure, but there's a Connor Bailey, the man, and Connor Bailey, the racer. It's having them as two distinct things is fine.
Yeah, definitely.
And looking ahead at the season, then, I mean, the Glasgow team, obviously, we've seen the lineup there. I mean, it looks a very strong side. I'm wondering what you're thinking of it. Obviously, most of the guys there from previous, but one or two new faces. How do you look at it? It's a good-looking team, isn't it?
Yeah, they always are with Glasgow. I think that the real key is to just steer clear of injury, because I think as soon as you, like last season, I mean, we lost a heavy hitter like Ulrich, and you just never really recover from that. We were still winning meetings, but I mean, to go into the final missing one of our hardest hitters in the whole team, I mean, it's an uphill battle from the start. I think that this year, provided we don't see any serious injuries or departures or anything like that, or drops in form, we have a real chance in actually winning it this year. And for me, it'll be a third time lucky, because it'll actually be my third year running with the Tigers. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We've come close twice now, very close, and just never quite got it over the line in the away meetings in the second leg. So yeah, hopefully we can actually get it across the line this year, and I think we've got quite a good team, very capable of doing that.
Yeah, you just need to wrap Ulrich in bubble wrap when you take him to Edinburgh.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Before we move on to, we normally close, Connor, with a bit of a quick fire round. I call it 5 ride maximum, 5 questions. I don't know, Lynn, if there was anything else that you wanted to ask really before we move on.
No, I think we got them all. I think we got all the questions that were asked. But just to let you know that I put the word out there about the Belle Vue place and about you doing this podcast on a variety of speedway sites, and the absolute minimum number of likes on any of them was 17, which is not bad for a relatively unknown person in a relatively unknown sport.
Yeah, no, I think
so you were Speedway Friends, Speedway Cosmos, Continental Speedway, Belle Vue, Glasgow, Edinburgh. You even got some likes on Edinburgh. There you go.
Yeah, I think that they're still happy with me. I'm still in the good books at Edinburgh because I did quite well for them a couple of months back, and as the stand-in. So I'm in the good books, and I'm happy with that. Hopefully, I'll stay there.
And there is some older speedway riders of yesteryear, many of whom were from Glasgow, that I'll be meeting with in a couple of weeks. But they're all watching you with interest as well. I'm not going to scare the life out of you, but throwing some names at you. But you're going to have a few other old timers behind you.
Nice way of putting that.
Brilliant. I suppose the message is there's a lot of support, there's a lot of people willing you on, and with Lynn in your corner, you've got somebody there who is going to keep sticking with you, and it's really nice. It's nice to hear, and Lynn's great for the podcast because you quite forensic. I think we go back to some of the things you've done before, Lynn. I mean, you it's about who you know, as you've said that before yourself. It's about who you know, not what you know, and you're a very good connector and relationship builder, which again for a speedway rider is probably quite important, even if that's secondary to the preparation and getting yourself ready for the track.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move to the five ride maximum. You got a chance here, 3 points per question then, Connor, and just a little bit quick fire, get to know some of your views and thoughts a bit more around the sport, if you would. So, okay, you've gone out for your first one, you've done a few practice starts, you've had Lynn saying you need to work on them. Your first ever meeting, can you remember the first meeting you went to? You did touch upon that a little bit earlier on, but can you remember whether it's one over here or one back in Australia?
Well, the first meeting as a spectator, yeah, I touched on it. It was at the Tumblegum inaugural meeting, which was motocross centric. And yeah, I suppose what I remember from that is just sort of feeling the pain of seeing someone break a chain and the unfairness at the time. You know, as a 6-year-old, I just was thinking, you know, why has he lost? Why doesn't he win when he's beat all the other riders every single time? And he's lost the meeting because he lost once. I thought it was interesting, but it's just so unfair, you know.
And it's not a bad rider to see either, is it? As one of the first ones to make an impression on you. I mean, Lee Adams, absolutely amazing rider, and yeah, just to get that experience of seeing somebody like him so early, you're quite lucky, really.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, just going back to that, I think in an odd sort of funny way, Lee really taught me how to ride, because I mean, that is the very first speedway DVD I ever had was his testimonial meeting at Mildura in 2010, I think it was, and I watched it over and over, just on repeat, watching it, even as much as just, you know, doing the moves and stuff, just sitting on my push bike in the living room. It's a bit funny to think about doing it back then, but no, I think he really he had an impact on me somehow. You know, I wasn't even really much of a speedway rider back then. I was really just sort of dabbling in it and copying what he was doing. And you know, it's always funny to see a still photo of me and someone comments, "Oh, that looks like Lee Adams," and I think, "Oh, well, he must have had some kind of impact on me through the TV."
I'm always interested in that. I'm always interested whether you, it sounds like a silly question, but whether you learn from watching other riders around you, whether there's little things you pick up in the way that they, you know, pick lines on the track, or just the posture or whatever. I mean, is that something that you do observe and pick up?
Yeah, definitely. I think you used the word just before. I think forensic describes the way I look at riders now. But you know, in the beginning, it was just watching the Lee Adams DVD and even some Nicky Pedersen ones, and just sort of copying how they rode the bikes. And like, I was always so fascinated how they could go around the corner with their foot up. And I always tried it on my 125, which didn't have enough power, and you just ultimately straighten up and not be able to turn. But no, I think in the beginning I was just copying what they were doing and trying to look as much like them as possible, because they were the ones going really fast on the track. So I thought that's what I need to do to go fast. And yeah, nowadays when you think about how I watch riders, I think it's a lot more analytical, and you know, it's less copying them and learning how to ride, and more just learning how to beat them or learning how to ride with them if it's a teammate. So yeah, no, I watch a lot of meetings, and I've spent more money watching meetings online than I'd like to admit as a rider. But yeah, no, it's I just like watching Speedway as much as I like riding it.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. Okay, well, you got 3 points. That's the good news. You got 3 points from your first ride, so you're off already. That's a good start. The second question is about whether you have a favorite track or venue, and they could be the same place, or they might be different. Favorite track or venue?
Favorite track. I think if you go off of scores alone, you'd have to say Glasgow. I really like the track. I can pass just about anybody on my day, or just hopefully gate them. But yeah, favorite track to ride. Not racing or anything in particular like that, but just the one that's the most satisfying to ride for me is Newcastle. I just really like the way you can just go backwards into the corners and really lay it down on the way in. It's quite a slick track, and it's seen better days, but it's just so fun to ride. Extremely hard to pass anybody, but you know, when you get the setup just right, I mean, it's awesome. I love the track there. Very similar to Wolves as well. I quite like Wolverhampton, and just other tracks where you have to really turn the bike quite hard and be a bit more technical about it than just sort of flat out and open.
Well, that's interesting, because not everybody likes some of those tracks, do they? So it's good that you've got an affinity with that kind of thing as well. All right, so that's 6 points. I mean, you can't really get any wrong unless you just can't think of anything.
That's an answer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you should be fine. You should get it. Although you might get 2 in a bonus if you waver too much. So, you know, you might get a paid maximum. Your favorite rider. So again, I mean, you've mentioned a few people that you admire, and you've mentioned obviously Lee from that early impression, Ty Woofenden you've mentioned as well, Nicky Pedersen, Crumpy, etc. Who would, if you had to be pushed on who your favorite rider was, who would you say?
I think it's a multi-layered question, because when you put it like that, I mean, there's different aspects to riders. You know, what do I like about each rider? I think gun to my head, all around there, I'd have to pick Lee Adams, just because that's who I grew up on. You know, I used to watch him go around Mildura it might have been the same meeting over and over, but it was every week I'd watch it and just scour the internet for more, just trying to take everything in like a sponge. But I think, you know, touching on temperament, I do quite like Nicky Pedersen, just because, you know, not necessarily the way he antagonizes other riders, but I like the way he deals with it when they sort of upset with him. Just you can just see it makes him way more angry when he's laughing at him and pointing. So I think it's something I'd like to emulate, not necessarily putting people in the fence and damaging their bikes and all of that, or antagonizing them off the track. But I think, you know, I've had a few occasions when another rider's not been too happy with something I've done, which I thought was fine. And I think that instead of going over and just punching their lights out, it's better to get them more upset, because I think the more upset you are, I mean, you're not thinking about what you're going to be doing in the next race, and I'll just beat you off the line straight up like that. Yeah, it's something I've always liked to do, is just be inside the other riders' heads and try and have them sort of unravel without any violence or anything like that. Just, yeah.
No, it's nice to hear that. I mean, we talk about characters in Speedway and how you need to almost build some kind of character that people can identify with, you know, outside of just another rider who comes on with the race suit again. That's another thing, actually, when you've got the team race suits, you know, it used to be that you could express your individual style through your own colors and what you wore, really. But so that's interesting. And all the top riders, I mean, they've all got an edge, haven't they? You don't get many of the riders who have been world champions who haven't got quite a hard edge to them, whether they're going out there and being physical on the track or just the way they approach the sport. So it's interesting to hear that's something that you really thought about in terms of the mental side and how you might impact other riders. And I guess you're aware as well of how they might impact you as well.
Yeah, I think thinking like that makes me a bit have a bit more of a defense against getting shook or unraveled like that, because, you know, you watch the other riders and you think, oh, well, I mean, we'll look at what they're reacting to. They went out and had a bad race and they're basically on the verge of tears sitting in their pit. And it's, I mean, when you watch it from the outside, it's comical, because you're like, I mean, come on. When you put it in perspective, you've lost one race, you know, you got 3 more. Just settle down a bit and focus on the next one, not what you've done poorly, or even just put it down to luck, even if it's not. I mean, dismissing a bad race is the best thing you can do, whether you're in the right or wrong. It's as long as it's gone from your head, that's the best thing possible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, another podcast we run is Snooker. They talk about that a lot, about often you miss a shot and then you sat down watching your opponent clear it up. And it's that bit of you just have to move on. You just have to get ready for the next one, or else your game is stuffed, really. So yeah, similar really, isn't it? Put it behind you, focus on the next one. That's 9 points. That's 9 out of the 3 rides so far, so all going well. The fourth question's similar, but it might not be the same answer. So who's the most entertaining rider? So, you know, if you were to put on or to think of someone who you just would watch all day, every day, it might be Adams, it might be somebody you've already mentioned, but is there anyone you just love watching because of the way they ride the bike?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Adams, just because he's got a really nice style to watch. But, you know, coming back into the present a bit more, I do quite like watching Chris Harris just go around. I mean, I identify with him a bit because he doesn't make every gate straight off the mark, and I mean, he's quite a hard force to stop. I've watched him at Glasgow pass Cookie where there's not room to do that, and he's done it, and it's, you know, as hard as it is to watch as Cookie's teammate, it's just exciting. You know, you find yourself getting wrapped up in it, almost going for him, thinking, yeah, get past, and wait, no, I can't do that. I'm on the wrong team. But yeah, no, he's just exciting to watch, and it's just almost funny to see how he just continues to go out and beat people that are younger than him by considerable amounts, and he makes it look easy. I mean, I think it's the grass tracking, but he loves the rough track, and I think that the fact that he loves the rough track gets in other riders' heads and just messes with them, because if it gets a bit rough, they think, oh God, what am I in for now? He's going to embarrass me. And yeah, no, he's really entertaining to watch, just the way he comes from behind.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess there's that sense of you never know where he is. So if he's missed the gate, is he right up the back, or, you know, is he going to come round? So it must be quite unsettling if you're ahead of him sometimes. And finally, the fifth question, really, you perfect score so far. Can you think of the best meeting you've watched? I mean, you obviously love Speedway. You watch it in your own time and you watch it online. Is there a particular meeting that stands out as your favorite that you've seen?
I've watched quite a lot of meetings now, but they all kind of mold together as one. But I can think of some individual races where I think there was a match race between I know Janoski was in it. It's all over Facebook. Everyone's seen it, and yeah, it's almost more exciting than with 4 riders, because they were literally just jousting each other, just one for one. I'll pass you, then you pass me, then I'll come up the inside. It was just an awesome race to watch. You know, it's just so exciting to watch riders at the very highest level perform at their very highest level internally, and just produce racing like that. And, you know, you see the respect after the race, just even whoever comes off second best. I mean, you can't help but have respect for someone that's pulled off a good move on you. If it's clean, you just have to appreciate it, because it's a good move. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite races, is that match race. Just watching them, you know, both of them wanted to win it and neither of them wanted to lose it, and they were just putting their heart and soul into it, just throwing the bikes at each other. And yeah, I really like that one.
Yeah, it's great. It's great that you see the sport as a rider and as a fan. That's pretty cool, really. That's obviously quite a big thing for you. So, well, there you go. You know, 15 points, 5-ride maximum. You've just gone back outside the pits gate. You've got the bumps. Your teammates, the fans are all shouting, and people are coming right up to the fence. So, yeah, well done. So great. You know, I think from our point of view, and certainly from my point, just want to thank you really for giving your time and sticking with us and getting this on eventually. And I'm going to move to Lynne in a sec. You know, just big thanks really for that. And from my point of view, just want to wish you the very best this season. I'll keep an eye out for you, and no doubt through Lynne, I'll know a lot about how you're getting on, whichever way, whether it's stuff I've read in, whether it's stuff in the Speedway Star or outside of it. I expect there'll be a lot more than that. Lynne, I'll let you take the floor.
Amongst the other things that we've done is Connor might have to get used to listening to this at Glasgow.
Can't hear anything yet, Lynne.
A song called Tornado.
Oh, the song. Yeah, I remember.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
no, Mum showed me that.
Yes. So we're going to get the lyrics printed out so that folk can yell it when you win a race. We've talked to the DJ, and he's going to play that chorus when you win.
That's awesome. Even got my own theme song, purpose made.
It's every little bit helps.
Yeah, no, it's just another reason to get the fans shouting, because that creates a good atmosphere.
It does.
Are you a wheelie person, Connor? When you win, sometimes do you like getting the wheelies out, or is that not for you?
I think a wheelie is more premeditated. You know, if I win a race by a long shot, I'm thinking, right, I'll do a wheelie. That was a good race. But you know, if I've had a really strong race against someone and just passed him in the last lap, or just done something heroic, so to speak, you know, I don't really get time to plan it, so I just kind of go around, wave my arms about, and do a bit of shouting. And yeah, no, it really depends on the timing. But I think my wheelies are getting better now. I'm starting to win a few more races comfortably, and yeah, eventually I'm hoping to do a few donuts, but I'd like to practice those before I go out and embarrass myself and fall off doing that. So no, it's I don't know. It depends on how much time I've had to plan the celebration, I think. But generally speaking, if I'm filled with adrenaline and, you know, just coming off the back of a really hard race, I'll just get the fans on their feet. I'm sure they already mostly are.
Yeah.
Would you like to see some donuts then, Lynne? Are you up for that?
Only if we can get someone to sponsor them for some new tyres.
Sure you can get that arranged, Lynne.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks a lot. We'll wrap it up there, but you know, we'll watch your season unfold with interest, Connor, and hopefully your wheelies will improve as the season goes, because that means you're doing well.
Yeah, definitely.